So up here, that white sign on the left, and you'll see it says private way, but it's ridiculous. They don't want people coming down here, but we have, as tribal people, like I said, we've got the right to hunt, fish, and gather in our usual and customary places. We also have the right to access the water and shall not be taxed or impeded on our right to travel or access the water. So these privatizations of some of these areas, this sense that they can tell you you can't drive down a road or walk on a beach is a part of that, impeding our right to access the water. No trespassing signs, these, private way, private road signs are actually, they're an impediment to our ability to access the water. And they aren't really valid legally, because we do have those rights as indigenous people. They don't get to just privatize everything. They like to put them up, but they realize also that they don't really have the legal ability to enforce them. So, but they try. Whoever owned this house and built this house initially used to go round and round and get it with my grandfather all the time for coming down this road and fishing, because this is his old favorite fishing spot since before these houses were here. And we have that right to access the water, so all of a sudden they feel like they get to own this road that's been here since before the houses, that they get to own this access to the water and to the bay. But this is Punkhorn Point. So we've gone along the Mashpee River from the Mashpee Pond through the Herring Run and past the farm and on down. Now we are here at Punkhorn Point, where the Mashpee River comes and flows into Papaneset Bay. You'll see the notice and no trespassing signs all on the island there, because the person who's decided they own the island, they've purchased it or whatever. They want to build a house, but you can't get access to the place they wanted to build a bridge across to the island, and they got a bunch of pushback. So they aren't even really able to access this island themselves, but they've made it a point to put up these no trespassing signs on the island. I don't know what goes through some people's minds, but obviously they feel so self-important that they get to have an island that they don't ever get to and use, but they want to make sure that nobody else does either. But just on the other side of that one, out in the point, that's where we have a bunch of our cages for our oyster seeds. So there's oysters being seeded into the water over there, quahogs being seeded into the water over there. It's been a number of points in time I've come down here and you see no shellfishing, pollution, contaminated signs, because you see there's so many of these houses built right next to the water. If you look over your shoulder over this way, I mean, they're just all right piled up on top of the water. We could take the canoe down and you could see how many of them. Just house after house after house. There's hardly any space on the shoreline where there isn't houses. And, we've always said that this is going to cause problems with the water quality. We've always said that this is going to cause problems with our ability to shellfish and sustain ourselves from this water like we have for millennia. We've always been against development so close to the water. We've always wanted buffer zones. We've always wanted to slow down on how many permits are issued every year. But we haven't been able to get that. And now there's a push to expand, like I said, 1,700 more units. That aren't truly affordable. They're market rate units. They want to push them right up to the very edge of the water again, up river from here, so that all the woods that are between the shopping districts now and the river will be just consumed, and they'll be able to market those for higher and higher rates, I'm sure, because of that access to the water. They want zoning ordinance exemptions so that they can build 5-story buildings They say that it's not going to be a problem with the septic systems, that with proper septic systems that they'll be able to deal with the load on the river, and that most of the nitrogen actually comes from fertilizer and all this. But the truth of the matter is that a good part of the nitrogen in the water is from septic runoff. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be restricting use of fertilizer, especially on these huge monstrous golf courses which are right next to the river, and a lot of times are really wanting that lush green look to their grass for playing golf, and they fertilize the hell out of them. And that's a problem. They push to have the common everyday homeowner and private property owners take on the onus of dealing with the issue by not fertilizing their little lawn in their yard. But you've got these big golf courses, we've got these big commercial areas, you have these homeowner associations with housing developments like Willow Bend and New Seabury, where we're surrounded by, that that do plenty of maintaining of their space and put plenty of fertilizer into the ground. And like I say, that runoff of the septic leaching, that nitrogen ends up in the water, it ends up in the groundwater, and that ends up here in the bay. And then that ends up causing algae blooms, causes contamination so that we can't shellfish. And it's a part of how we sustained ourselves, not only as far as feeding ourselves from the land, but it's a part of our culture. It's a part of how we engage with the land that we come from as Wampanoag people, is by taking on these practices, doing the things that our ancestors have done here, right here. This is part of where my grandpa taught me to shellfish, was coming out to these waters, and these are practices that we're now being restricted from being able to teach another generation about the importance of the herring, about the importance of the quahog, about the importance of giving back to the earth, about the importance of this cycle. Because if we can't take part in these activities that these lessons come out of, it's really hard to just teach these as abstractions. It's easy when you can show a kid that you actually give the earth food by giving it fish. It's easy to come down to the water and see that this is the water that you get your clams from, that you have to treat that water with respect. When you disconnect it, it's just something that you read in a book. It never is able to make the same real impression on a child. But when our kids grow up and are able to engage in these cultural practices, these values are instilled in them in a very tangible, real way, because they get to touch the water, they get to touch the clams, they get to touch the herring, they get to touch the corn, and they get to eat and see the sweetness that comes from that. And they get to be disappointed when these things are ruined for us and told that we can't do that because of contamination, and because the cold water has been upset from overdevelopment, from over-fertilization, and really just too much of a burden on this system. We need to stop development. We need to slow down. We need to stop building so close to the water. And that's the only way we're going to fix it.